Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. Pope Francis died at 88 years old on Monday. Crowds gathered at the Vatican to pay their respects, and many more Catholics around the world also mourned, including hundreds of thousands in North Carolina. WRAL talked to some of them about his life and legacy and where we go from here. Here's part of Sean Gallagher's conversation with Bishop Louis Zarama, who was appointed to the Diocese of Raleigh by Pope Francis in 2017.
Bishop, I guess when you first heard the news, what went through your mind?
I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. Yesterday he came to the loggia in the St. Peter's Square, and he came to a ride in the papal mobile around St. Peter's Square, and this morning the news came that he died. I'm still in shock. I'm trying to digest the news.
And that message that you shared with the congregation about his life of service, was that kind of all the interactions that you had with him were always things like that?
Every time when I was, thanks to be God, able to meet with him, was a lesson of humility. He always was looking to make you feel comfortable with him. He never let you feel that he was more than the person who was in front of him. And that required a lot of humility, make you feel comfortable. And when you are comfortable, you are able to speak. And that is what a great gift of him, be able to listen before he was able to talk. And that was a beautiful, beautiful example for me personally.
Can you talk a little bit about, you said he was the one who would welcome you before you could even go in the door.
I had the experience to meet popes before, and it was a very formal wait when you were waiting for him. You were waiting in the waiting room, and they opened the doors, and they guide you, and the pope was some place inside. But with him, the first time, he came out, and he was right there in front of the door and welcomed me with a nice smile. And I was trying to kiss his ring, and he didn't like that. He liked to shake hands. And that simple fact of shaking hands was a way to warm you, And that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Let's take a quick break, then we'll hear what happens next to elect a new pope.
As you can imagine, this can be a delicate, complicated process. So to help us understand what takes place during that process is Peter Casarella. He's a professor of theology at Duke Divinity School. Peter, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
So we just ran through some of the basics of the conclave. This is a process that has taken place for 2,000 years. But can you give us an idea of what sorts of things the cardinals will consider when they cast their vote?
Sure. I would start with just prior to the locking the door and the conclave itself. There will be maybe up to a week of what are called general congregations. And these are talks sometimes organized by the Dean of the College of Cardinals, in this case it's John Battista Re, or other senior voting cardinals, in which they talk about the situation in the church today. For example, when Joseph Ratzinger gave a talk on a dictatorship of secularism in 2005, that was very influential in his being elected Pope at that juncture. And these are also a time in which the cardinals, all the cardinals, and especially the 135 voting cardinals, will get a chance to know one another. Some of them have spent very little time together in the Vatican, in Rome. And this is just to relax and get to talk about the situation in church. This is an incredibly important process. Then once they get to the conclave itself, I don't have a crystal ball, or I'm not the Holy Spirit, but then they'll begin to consider the grave issues in the church. There's an Italian saying that a fat pope is followed by a skinny pope. Should the progressive Francis be followed by a more conservative pope? I don't think, and the movie makes us think about that, of course, I don't think it's that black and white. I think it's more a question of finding both continuity and allowing someone to come in and do some new things that maybe Francis didn't do.
And we mentioned how age plays a role in this. While the cardinals casting ballots are all under 80 years old, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to elect someone under the age of 80. That said, the last time a pope elected in his 80s was 1406. It has been a while. Pope John Paul II was younger, was 58 years old. What would that mean for the church to go with a younger pope?
That's an excellent question. I was actually surprised that Bergoglio in 2013 was elected. I thought he might be too old himself. But a pope like John Paul II in his late 50s, that would be startling. It would mean that the voting electors in the College of Cardinals had such great confidence in that man to serve as the Bishop of Rome, to serve as the Pope for decades to come. And that would be, in a sense, a good thing, because we would have more continuity and not the kind of uncertainty we've had with Pope Benedict resigning and so forth and so on. On the other hand, if they want someone who's a trusted, insured guide, a good administrator, someone who can govern the church because they see too much commotion or too much uncertainty, they might choose someone maybe not over 80, but closer to the 80-year-old limit for the electors.
Now, you mentioned that a lot of these people don't know each other. They've never met in the Vatican before, maybe not frequently. Of the 135 cardinals, 108 were selected by Pope Francis. So they do have some similarities, at least in that regard. Could we see another pope similar to Francis after this?
Yes, but the question is, what would that mean exactly? So you're exactly right. Francis, of the 135 electors, chose 81%, and St. John Paul II chose 5, and Benedict XVI 22. So together that only represents 19%. The other thing to look at in terms of the composition of the voting cardinals is that Francis wanted, it's in line with the overall theme of his pontificate, going out to the peripheries, helping those on the margins. Francis wanted to see, rightfully, more representation from the global south.
Right.
So 13% are from Africa, 27% from the Americas, 17% from Asia. But I don't think those represent voting blocs. It's not like Francis is going to say, now you have to vote for this person.
Sure.
Some of the people from the global south, I'm not going to name names, but certainly from Africa, would have a more conservative agenda on LGBTQ issues, on the role of women in the church, than Francis himself. But he wanted them there to have greater diversity of voices within the Catholic communion.
Well,
so that creates an interesting dynamic.
We know the world will be watching. Professor Casarella, thank you so much for your time and insight tonight.
Thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us a part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. That's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.